Greetings, brothers. With the recent removal of Firstborn, we need to get more Primaris units on the table. I'm going to talk to you about some of the ones that I think are the most cost-effective and the best you can field now in 10th edition. Probably if you're struggling to figure out what to buy next or what to add to your army, this video will be pretty useful for you as well. So greetings friends, and if we're just meeting, I am John, the Blood Angels Commander, and every week here on YouTube we talk to you about getting the most out of your Blood Angels army on the tabletop. If that's something you're interested in, please consider subscribing. So let's start with the 195 point Repulsor, and I'll tell you why I like this. I think it's better than the Land Raider because you're paying a lot of points to get an assault ramp and one extra on your armor save. Yes, I suppose a 2-up armor save from the Land Raider is very good, but I think the Repulsor kind of stays in there. So arming the Repulsor, the way I would arm it, I would take the Las Talon. So that would be the top cannon. Basically, you're going to get 2 shots, strength 10 minus 3d6 plus 1. Then you're going to take the twin Las cannon. That's not going to be as good because it's just going to be 1 shot, but it is twin linked. And that is also strength 12. Minus 3d6 plus 1. You also got a Repulsor defensive array, and I've actually had great success with this because there's 18 shots. So you need to remove some opponent's infantry. You know, you're going to make like 12 hits against toughness 4, they're going to have to make like 6 saves. If you use Oath of Moment on the Repulsor defensive arrays target, you're probably going to make them make like 10 to 12 saves. It's pretty good. I had it kill whole squads of Sisters of Battle multiple times, and I think it's decent. So basically, then you've also got your indirect fire Hunter Slayer missile. So I guess, I mean, it's cool it's indirect fire. It is only 1 shot throughout the whole game, and it's ballistic skill 2. But I mean, the way I would look at this is it's got a Las Talon and a Las Cannon. So basically 3d6 is kind of its maximum damage, and then it's got a weapon that kills chaff. But it's OC 5 and it's toughness 12 with 16 wounds. So you're going to be able to dominate the board, and I've been using this to basically just drive straight to the middle objective. I'm playing the Gladiator detachment, so we basically just go straight to the middle objective, we move our 10 inches, we advance d6, we shoot our weapons, and maybe we shoot an oath target. Like, it's generally pretty decent, and it's also got a transport capacity of 12. What I'm trying in the moment inside it is like Blade Guard veterans along with Centurions, but I've also done it with Blade Guard veterans and Incursors, and I like both options. I guess the cool thing is if you did disembark, the rules here let you jump back into the transport if you get charged. I've never actually done that. This thing for me is a bullet magnet. Quite often I'm going to drive this to the middle of the board, I'm going to try and take the center objective, and I'm OC 5. So there's a good chance I can hold the center objective. People might, like, I think in one of my games, somebody said, the Repulsor did nothing for you. And I was like, well, it didn't do nothing. It took the opponent's whole army 2 turns of firing to kill it. So everything else in my army was being ignored while they tried to kill this Repulsor on the center objective. Obviously, with Armor of Contempt and potential smokescreen, it can be pretty survivable. For 195 points, if you want to deliver some infantry, you're not super worried about that infantry charging, then I think it's as good as the Land Raider. I think just the points cost. If I had 2 of these, I think I would run 2 of them. I'd maybe just put as little as 3 Blade Guard in each. I think this is just a toughness 12 unit that you can park on an objective with basically arguably 3 Las Cannon shots, really, and then a bunch of chaff firepower. And you just park it on an objective and you just hold objectives with it. And I've never felt like I've been able to bully the board with a Blood Angels list. This is the first time I've ever felt I was able to just bully the board. Like, yes, I don't care if this dies, I'm just going to sit it in the midfield, and it's going to be very difficult for my opponent to deal with. But the only thing that's going to kill this effectively is Gladiator Lancers, but we know that they're undercosted, and they might just be in this list. So I also put on this list the Repulsor Executioner. It's 35 points more than Repulsor, but you give up basically your twin Las Cannon and your Las Talon, and you replace it with that heavy laser destroyer, and that is 72-inch range, 2 attacks, strength 16 minus 4, d6 plus 4. d6 plus 4 is the most damage we can get from any ranged cannon in the Space Marine list, really. So again, it's got transport. It can take 6. So again, Blade Guard are like a key unit that could fit inside here. I suppose you could also fit like a 5-man squad of Incursors or something like that if you wanted to. It does have some other weapons on there, obviously, like it's got a twin heavy bolter and it's got potentially an onslaught cannon and stuff like this. But I think the whole reason you take it is the heavy laser destroyer cannon. Again, toughness 12 is going to make it very difficult to kill, and also 16 wounds. It's like 90 points more expensive than a Gladiator Lancer. You could argue the Gladiator Lancer is a little bit more reliable because it gets like a hit, a wound, and a damage reroll. But the Executioner does get sort of like this Executioner profile. So each time this model makes an attack that targets a unit below half strength, you add 1 to the hit roll. So it'd be good at finishing off enemies that are already below at half strength because you get 2 shots hitting on 2s. Strength 16 minus 4. It also has the same defensive array, but this time slightly less attacks, and I want to say that's the same range, is it? Yeah, 24 inches on the defensive array. Okay, so slightly less attacks there, but I think the Executioner, again, I think it's possibly better than Land Raider. If you're wanting to make charges out of a Land Raider, then I guess, you know, or charges out of a transport, the Land Raider is better. But we're talking about Primaris vehicles today, and I'm not necessarily trying, in my list, I'm not trying to make charges out of vehicles. I'm not playing Sons of Sanguinius because I found the +1 strength that they get from charging can be quite irrelevant. And for me, I'd probably be putting like, well, the 2 units that I think that I would be running in melee are Blade Guard. Well, they're only strength 5. So if they get +1 strength, they're only strength 6. So against tough armor, they're still wounding on 5s or 6s. So +1 strength doesn't help that much. And if I was going to run the new Terminators, which I actually quite like, and I put on this thumbnail, and technically they're maybe not Primaris, but they are cool. If I was going to run those new Terminators, well, I'd arm them all with Chain Fists. So Chain Fists obviously have anti-vehicle 3 up. So for the most part, I suppose it would be different as I'm playing a monster list. For the most part, +1 strength doesn't help when you have anti-vehicle 3 up it's like a stat line on your weapon, right? So I like the Executioner. I don't own an Executioner, but I think I need to proxy my regular Repulsor as an Executioner, see how we feel, because we know that the Lancer, the Gladiator Lancer, is super powerful. Everybody's running them. I think it's next on this list. It's coming up in this top 5, and we'll say why. But I think typically when people latch onto a single unit, which the Gladiator Lancer, and people are saying like just run 3 Gladiator Lancers in every game, when that happens, those units go up in points. If the Gladiator Lancer goes up 20-30 points, then suddenly the Repulsor Executioner becomes like a lot more attractive, I think. But yeah, I think Repulsors for the first time in forever seem interesting. I just think the Land Raiders are too expensive. I get you can charge out of them, but if you're playing Gladiator's Detachment, you will advance, and you will advance on turn 1 and shoot all your weapons. If you even roll an average on that, you're moving forward like 13 inches with these things. You disembark 3 inches, you're forward 16. Even if you're using Centurions who only move 4 inches, you're forward another 4 inches. You could also call Assault Doctrine in turn 2, so you could advance again. Another average roll would be a 3. 3 is actually below average. So technically speaking, even though you can't charge out of the Repulsor when it is, after it's moved, you could basically tell me my Centurions, if you wanted to put Centurions inside a regular Repulsor, they wouldn't fit inside the Executioner. If you want to put Centurions inside a Repulsor, they're going to be 23 inches forward, ready for a charge in turn 2. Like, do I really need the assault ramp at that point? I mean, the deployment zones are usually about 20 inches apart, so I'm already in the opponent's deployment zone with Centurions in turn 2 without the assault ramp. I don't think I want to pay 80 points for assault ramp. You're more than welcome to contradict me here. We always have a good discussion down in the comments down below, so please feel free to leave me a comment on if you think I'm wrong. But I'm just telling you that I'm finally starting to grind out wins. The last 2 weeks I've played, I have 1 now, and my lists are very armor heavy. and with the recent culling of the Firstborn, like, we lost attack bikes, we lost land speeders, we lost scout snipers, we lost so many things. I was actually sort of struggling a little bit into like, hey, what units do I have that I can put in my list now? And also, one of the reasons to make this video was like, I'm at the point now, I don't want to buy anything else that is going to be removed from the game, because it's actually really frustrating, and it's probably like damaging to my, you know, I'm being really frustrated about seeing half my army gutted. And I have a lot more Firstborn. Like, I have a lot more Firstborn. Like, I just finished 30 Sangry Guard within the last year, you know? And I don't want to, like, if those guys go as well, I'm going to have nothing left. I'm going to just have to build everything Primaris, and it's worrying, honestly. So, going forward, I just want to buy stuff that I feel is not going to get removed. And let me tell you about the Storm Speeder next. So I've used the Storm Speeder, the Thunderstrike specifically, in a couple of games. The Thunderstrike actually pairs crazy well with Desolation Marines, because Desolation Marines have so many firepower, so much shots, so many long-range shots, so many indirect shots, but they don't have great wound rolls on those indirect shots. They don't even have great wound rolls on their super cracks, because they're only strength 10. But if you hit your opponent that you're shooting at with the Thunderstrike, if it's a vehicle or a monster, you're going to get +1 to hit. Now, the Thunderstrike is very expensive. It's 160 points, and really, you're only really going to do maybe damage with this missile, right? Like the single 2-up strength 12 minus 3d6 +1 missile. But I suppose you do get 3 missiles at 36 inches. So the plan here is to park this thing 36 inches from the enemy, a monster vehicle, and shoot it. Hopefully, it's a low value target for your opponent, because it's not really that strong. 11 wounds, toughness 9. It's not terrible. It's not super strong though. But the idea is to give loads of your other units +1 to wound against that target. And obviously that target could be Oath of Moment. And when I was fighting against knights, a couple of the knights were toughness 13, and getting +1 to wound was making a huge difference. It was meaning that I could actually wound the knights with my strength 4 indirect fire on 5s with Oath of Moment. 10 Desolation Marines actually put out a ridiculous amount of firepower, even though they're more expensive now. But this will go for everything. You know, like, people are running double Gladiator Lancers. Well, Gladiator Lancers will go from wounding a toughness 13 knight on 3s to 2s. So if you're wounding on 2s twice with a reroll, because you get a reroll built in on the Lancer, then it adds, the Thunderstrike just adds tons of reliability to shooting across the board. It is expensive. Don't get me wrong, it is expensive. And I think it's too risky to sit 48 inches away, because you only get 1 shot. So you have to give it a little bit of, you have to get it at 36. So it's a little bit vulnerable when, you know, but if it is vulnerable, then you're going to almost guarantee, because you get 3 shots hitting on 2s. You don't roll 3 1s all that often. I want to say that happens like once every 10 games or less. 3 1s from 3 dice is very infrequent. So most of the time, 95% of the time, maybe even more. I don't know the math on rolling 3 1s in a row. I guess it would be 16, 16, 16. So it would be, it's going to be less than like 1% actually. Do you know what? I'll tell you. It would be 16 times 0.16 times 0.16. Okay, it's less than 0.5%. So 99.5% time, if you're 36 inches away, you're giving everything else that shoots that target +1 to wound. Yes, it's 160 points, but I think you can get a ton of value out of that depending on your enemy. And you know, I haven't put Vindicators into this list, but I have been running a ton of Vindicators, and I think Vindicators are brilliant now. And they are strength 14, so into armor they typically wound on 3s. If you hit that armor with a Thunderstrike, you'll wound on 2s. That'll make them super reliable as well. Okay, so I like the Thunderstrike a lot. I do think it's a little bit too expensive, but I guess this buff is very good. So I think I'm willing to pay the 160 points. If you as long as you're running enough shooting to get value out of this, I think it's probably worth it. And every day at the moment we talk about how much armor you should have on a 10th edition list, and a lot of people are saying like you should have 1,000 points of armor. Lots of people are lots of people are saying you should have 1,000 points of armor, heavy firepower in your list because that's what you need to win games. At the moment, I think my last list was at 1,200 points of armor. I'm going to try a list next week actually at 1,400 points of armor. But 1,200 has won twice in a row. But I actually felt like I had too much melee, which is pretty crazy to say. I had too much infantry in my 1,200 point list. Or 1,200 points of armor, 800 points of infantry. I felt like I had too much infantry because infantry are not performing as well as I would hope on the battlefield. They're just not. I mean, I don't think I'm playing them wrong. Maybe, like someone said, I'm playing too many heavy... Someone said I'm playing too many armies that have, like... I'm playing against knights too often. I'm playing against Imperial Guard too often. But what I'm doing is I'm playing against people that have figured out that armor is the way forward, so I'm playing against a lot of armor. Armor is just cheap. I wouldn't say dreadnoughts are cheap, but armor is cheap. And that's why there's no dreadnoughts in this list. The next unit up is obviously none other than the Gladiator Lancer. 145 points. I think you almost just need to be running 3 of them. Someone asked yesterday in the the Facebook group, how many Lancers is the right number of Lancers to have in your list? Well, I have 1. I just put an order in today for a commission for another one, so I will have 2. I think 2 or 3. I think 2 or 3 is absolutely fine at 145 points. Their main cannon is just so good. You know, you don't even need to care about the fact that they have rocket pods and a stubber and a stormbolter. It doesn't even matter. The main cannon with optics basically means when you shoot, you can reroll 1 hit, 1 wound, 1 damage. So you've got 2 shots hitting on 3s, reroll 1 of them. You've got 2 wounds probably, wounding on 3s, reroll 1 of them. You've got 2 damage rolls, d6 plus 3, reroll 1 of them. If you've got 3 of these things here, that's so much reliability. If you add in, this is why I'm saying if you add in Incursors, remember anything your Incursors shoot, you're going to get +1 to hit against. Remember, if you add in that thunderstrike, anything that the thunderstrike hits, you're going to get +1. Monsters or vehicles, of course, you're going to get +1 to wound on. So you can basically make these Lancers hit on 2s, wound on 2s. You could also add a Techmarine. I mean, a Techmarine isn't a bad option right now. 145 points, they're really, really good. They obviously have smokescreen. It's very easy to get cover. They can sit miles back because they get 72 inches on that main cannon, and if they get focused, you can Armor of Contempt them. I've been using Armor of Contempt as my main stratagem almost. Armor of Contempt and Smoke. I've been using them all the time. It's been keeping my armor alive. It's been forcing enemies to overcommit on them. And then the other cool thing is they're OC3. So, like, I literally held my home objective against a squad of... Normally, what would have happened, like last edition, I'd have my Whirlwind on my home objective, and the second the enemy put a couple of infantry on it, I've lost the home objective. Now, you know, I had my Gladiator Lancer hold my home objective against a squad of Seraphim because he managed to kill a couple of them, and then it was like, okay, so your Seraphim can't actually take this objective from me. Or maybe it was Seraphim, doesn't really matter, but it was like 2 Sisters of Battle infantry. And it was like, you have 2, so my Lancer's just going to hold this. Which never happened. I think he maybe even had 3 and we just contested it for 1 turn. But over the course of the game, the Lancer and the backfield objective was fine, and its sneaky little 72-inch range was good as well. Yeah, so the Lancer, 145 points. I am very wary. I think the reason I am only commissioning 1, or I'm only getting 1 more, that I really think these will go up in cost. So if you can... magnetize the sponsons and magnetize the main turret, because it's possible to do, and I think it's probably going to be worth it. I really do. I actually do like the Valiant variant of Gladiator. It's only 10 points more, but I haven't run it yet. I think on paper it looks good. It's the only Space Marine tank that has strength 10 melta-weaponry, and so that means it's pretty good against some enemy armor. Obviously, there's some enemy armor that is above toughness 10, but strength 10, toughness 10 seem to be a break point, right? Like if you've got crack missiles, for example, or you've got, I guess, like a Las Talon, strength 10 seems okay. It doesn't seem too bad. Strength 10, it definitely seems like a break point where maybe you'll wound enemy armor on 4s, but that isn't too bad. So yeah, Gladiator Lancer is 100% on this list, and then I'm going to follow up with the Techmarine. So one thing I've noticed with the Techmarine gets 4 attack space with his power axe, right? Which is fine. He's also a lone operative. If he's within 3 inches of vehicle, that's going to be so easy to do, right? Because you're going to be all around your vehicles. He's going to be able to give a vehicle D3 additional wounds back and +1 to hit, which you're going to be able to make use of in most turns if you're running 1,000 points of armor very easily. He's only 65 points. He hasn't got the greatest number of wounds, but he does have a 2-up save. I mean, there could be an argument here for giving him a relic to try and make him more survivable, but you know, as long as you're smart with where you put him and you use his lone operative, most of the time he's not going to be getting shot. The interesting thing is, in all the games I've used the Techmarine, you are going to lose a start his vehicle within 12 inches of the model. And the second that happens, he goes from 4 attacks up to 7 attacks. So 7 attacks on weapon skill 3 up, probably about 5 hits, strength 6 minus 2 damage. And then he gets the extra attack with his servo arm as well. So really it's 8 attacks total. He can do some damage, probably kill some infantry later on in the game. Obviously you're going to get value throughout the game as he keeps vehicles alive and gives them +1 to hit. That'll obviously counter any time a vehicle goes down into lower bracket as well. It'll prevent it from basically hitting on 4s. It'll keep it hitting on 3s. He's got grenades, so he can do some mortal wounds as well. And you can probably start him in a vehicle if you really want to, but don't really have to, because the enemy won't be able to shoot him because they're not within 12 inches for the lone operative. So the Primaris Techmarine is a good one. Unfortunately, the Firstborn Techmarine and the Servitors, I think, are gone. That was another cool squad that we could have done, where we could have had 12 Servitors attached to a unit, but I guess that's gone. So the Primaris Techmarine is fine. It's a cool model if you don't own a Primaris Techmarine. It was a really fun model to make and paint. I like it a lot more than the old metal Firstborn Techmarine. I want to talk to you for 2 minutes about Incursors. Incursors obviously could go in any of those transports that we have, like the Repulsor or the Executioners. If you buy a kit of Incursors, you can obviously make them as infiltrators, and some people swear by infiltrators because of the deep strike denial. I'm going for more offensive synergies at the moment. My offensive synergy is here with the multi-spectrum array. Any unit that the squad of Incursors get to shoot against, remember their weapons are assault. I've gone forward a slide, and they have got a scout, so that's a 6-inch pre-game move. So you're probably going to be able to get into range of a lot of things in that they have a 6-inch pre-game move, then their 6-inch move, then they can advance d6, so that can be them. Again, if you just have an average advance roll of like a 3 or less than average, you're 15 inches forward, so you've got almost a 40-inch threat range on these guys. Whoever you hit, you're going to get 10 shots, right? Whatever you hit, you're gonna make a single hit on 10 3-ups, right? You're gonna get +1 to hit against that. So that's gonna be very useful. Like I said, if you've got some Gladiator Lancers, these guys are never gonna do any damage to the tank, but if they make that enemy tank be able to be hit on 2s, then that adds tons of reliability into your other firepower. They do have sustained hits 1 in combat, which I guess is, it actually worked out for me a little bit. Like, they can kill something in combat, like it's not horrific. And once per battle at the start of any phase, you can select one enemy within 3 inches and you can roll a d6. And a 2-up, the enemy take d3 mortal wounds. And if it's a vehicle, they take 2 d3 mortal wounds. Well, we just talked about like everybody's running shitloads of vehicles, so these guys have the ability on a 2-up. Basically, if you ever charge a vehicle or you disembark from your repulsor and you can end within 3 inches of the vehicle, you can do up to 6 mortal wounds, probably on average about 4 mortal wounds to a vehicle. So these guys have a bit of play now. I think they had play before last edition, right? And a lot of Blood Angels players run 3 squads of them. I'm not recommending you run 3 squads of them, but I still think a box of Incursors comes with 10. You can build them into 1 squad of Incursors and 1 squad of Infiltrators, or you could go double on either. But I think Incursors and Infiltrators are still pretty cool units. For me personally, I think that the Incursors have more play, but I'm all about, like, 10th edition for me is, they said it was a less lethal edition. It's not. It's way more lethal. Everything is dying so fast. So if you have something like this where you can give +1 to hit and give all your tanks more reliability and just have a turn where you... Because I think I've had a couple of turns with my tanks where I've killed like 3 or 4 enemy tanks in a single turn. So if you can just do that and kill a couple extra units every turn or something, then I think there's actually quite a lot of strength in Incursors. And I like them. I wanted to also give a shout out. This would actually be unit number 6, but This is a unit I haven't tried, so I guess if you imagine the 5 that I've talked about, I have tried, except the Executioner, which I'm going to proxy pretty soon. But I do think the Executioner is just sort of a better version than the Repulsor. I just don't know if it's worth the 35 extra points. My gut sort of tells me I think it is. I think you would actually still put 6 Blade Guard inside an Executioner, because they actually only count as one slot, the Blade Guard. So if you wanted to run the 6-man Blade Guard and you wanted to be a bit more Blood Angels-y, I think you could still do that with an Executioner. And I really do think at the cost, it's not bad at all. Especially if you're going to run the other things that buff its main cannon, because that's, I guess, its main weakness is it hits on 3s and it wounds on 3s on the main cannon. So if you're going to push that up to 2s, you just give it more reliability from the get-go, I guess. Inceptors. The cool thing about Inceptors is they can deep strike, and when they do deep strike, they can set up anywhere in the battlefield just 3 inches away. So if your opponent is ever on an objective with a weak infantry unit, and I guess what I mean by weak infantry unit is probably like a toughness 4 infantry unit. If they're ever on an objective with a toughness 4 infantry unit, you can drop your Incursors on that objective, hopefully, have them like land on the objective so they are contesting it potentially, and then open up with your assault bolters. Now, up until last edition, lots of people ran plasma exterminators, and plasma exterminators were really expensive for a long time. But looking at it, if you were, let's say you were going into those toughness 4 infantry, because toughness 4 or toughness 3, the plasmas are 2 shots per model. If you don't overcharge them, you're basically going to get 6 shots hitting on 3s, so you're going to make like 4 hits. You're then going to, if it's toughness 4, you're going to then wound on 3s, so you're going to make the enemy take 3 saves, potentially 4, I guess, because you're twin linked. 3 or 4 saves at -2 damage. So probably, let's say if you're shooting against Space Marines, you can kill 2, maybe 3 Space Marines. Cool. What about the Assault Bolters? Well, the Assault Bolters are basically a heavy bolter, right? But they have sustained hits 2. So each Incursor now gets 3 shots, so that's 9 shots. Same ballistic skill 3 up, so we'd expect to make 6 hits. But anytime we score 6, which I guess out of 9 shots you would expect 1.5 6s, so you'd almost expect, on average, 1.5 6s would be 1.5 times the sustained hit 2, which means out of your 9 attacks, you're probably hitting all 9. Against the toughness 4, you're wounding with 3s, you're making 6 saves at -1/2 damage, which technically would kill the same 3 Marines that the plasmas would kill, right? Like, statistically, the values are basically the same. The interesting thing for me is sustained hits 2, I just think, has a little bit more potential for, like, well, I don't like overcharging plasma. So if you like overcharging plasma, go for it. Maybe you can kill some more elite infantry or something like that with those supercharged plasmas. You certainly could. You certainly could also kill your own models. For me, the assault bolters, if you got lucky there, score a couple of 6s, maybe even like 3 6s, which is possible out of 9 dice. 2 or 3 6s, you're suddenly going to probably be ahead against, like, you know, weaker infantry, and I don't know, I haven't seen too many people do this in 10th edition, and this is why I've put this unit at the very end, because I haven't had very many opportunities to play against this. But last edition, people would always hold objectives with, like, I don't know, a squad of cultists, or, you know, chaos cultists is what I'm talking about, or there'd be like 1 squad of orcs on an objective. So if you ever get to a situation like that, where the Incursors can drop down and pepper the crap out of them with the bolters, and you know, essentially kill quite a few models because of a couple of 6s. Especially if you ever Oath of Momented your target here, then, you know, you could reroll into some extra 6 to hit. I like the Assault Bolters. I've ran Assault Bolter Inceptors in previous editions, and I've liked them. That was because they were nice and cheap. This edition, they're 115 points, but each one is essentially a twin-linked sustained hits 2 heavy bolter, because it's strength 5 -1/2 damage. I think it could do some serious work. I want to give my Bolter Inceptors a whirl. I put them at the end of this list because I've never really had a chance to try them. But I'm going to try them. make sure you catch one of my future streams or something. You'll see Assault Walters in one of my lists. And that's kind of it for this week, guys. I just wanted to go over some of the Primaris units. If you're struggling to know what to add to your list because you've had to remove a ton of Firstborn stuff, then that's where we are, really. I really appreciate you watching to the end of the video. You can leave me down a comment below if there's something you wanted to add. I probably would have put Blade Guard Veterans in this list, but I literally made a video last week about like how to play Blade Guard Veterans to the highest level and what units to attach to them and how you can get the most out of them on the battlefield. So if you haven't seen that Blade Guard video, I would highly recommend you watch it now. There's a tactics playlist for 10th edition Blood Angels tactics on this channel. You can check it out over on the channel's page. If you click under the video on the YouTube page and go to my playlist, you'll see the 10th edition tactics. It's actually getting quite big. There's about 15 videos on there. I'll actually link it at the end of this video as well if you want to check out my tactics playlist. But if you didn't like or subscribe yet, please consider doing that. And remember, you can support the channel by clicking the big join button underneath. And for less than the price of a cup of coffee every month, you can support me and what I do here on YouTube. And it's super appreciated, guys. You really have, you know, the support I get here on YouTube is amazing. And I hope I make content for you that is really useful. And hey, look at that sexy gladiator over there in that corner. I've actually that's actually magnetized. On my one, you can whip out that turret and you can put the laser destroyer on here. Yeah, just seeing my falchion in the background here is really sad. I'm so sad. I'm still sad about the Forge World models not being allowed to be played anymore. But there, cool. Thanks again for watching. I'll catch you next week. By the blood are made strong, brothers. Peace.